In the Wings accepts 10-minute play submissions through email at inthewings.pbp@gmail.com. Please format scripts as PDF or Google Docs.
Lights, sound. We're at the top of the show. Let's have a good show. House cues, count. 3, 2, 1, warning. Go show cues. House to half. Pre-show music fade. House out. Pre-show music out. Like you won. Go. So we had technical difficulties this week with our source recording for our podcast. So because of that, we have a table discussion. First, we're going to start out and we're going to introduce ourselves. So my name's Kevin. I'm a teacher who worked in professional theater 12 years before I became a teacher, and this is my 12th year of teaching. So I've been doing theater for a little over 20 years.
I'm Kayla. I'm a student, and I've been doing theater for 4 years now.
My name's Justin. I'm a senior. I've been doing theater for 3 years now, locally and wherever I can find work.
My name is Nick. I'm a voice actor, and I'm doing theater for 3 years.
My name's Hunter. I've been doing theater for around 7 years.
When have you been doing it 7 years?
Right.
No, I started back in 5th grade.
Okay.
What'd you do?
My first show was Wizard of Oz when I was like this.
Oh,
Was
my
you a
first show was
tree?
A Christmas Carol.
You were a tree.
No, I was the Tin Man.
First question, now that we've introduced ourselves, I think first show is a good question. So, Justin, what was your first show? What do you remember about it?
My first show was at Wilson Elementary. I was in 4th grade, and we did a Christmas Carol. And I was a ghost of Christmas Present. I was more of like the hip-hop ghost. And so I had a little rap song that I had, and I just took it and ran with it. She gave me the CD. I listened to it 100 times. My mom got sick of it because I listened to it in the car because I had to get the rap down. It was my first quick change too. So I ran off stage, took off my jacket, threw off my shirt, threw on another shirt and jacket, and ran back out. I thought it was awesome.
My first show, was back in 5th grade for Kenwood Elementary. We did the Wizard of Oz, and I was the Tin Man. And I learned that back then it was light years easier than what it is doing theater now.
Kayla.
My first show was Remember Grace. I played Jinx.
That was your first show on stage.
Yeah, that was my first show on stage.
You've worked backstage before that, right?
Oh yeah, I have. I did backstage stuff for The Giver, and I had work slideshows, which was pretty complicated because if I would have messed up the slides, I would have messed up the whole show.
Nick, primarily you do voice acting, right? So what
Yes.
got you into that?
What got me into that was watching my favorite voice acting group of all time, Team 4-Star, on YouTube, who did the Dragon Ball Z Abridged series. Who of which I learned how to imitate their voices, like the voice of Goku, voiced by Moscow X. And from there, I learned how to do other voices on more so last year in September when I started my first official role as Okura in the Dragon Ball Z fanfic Bloodlines. And so far I've now reached 15 total roles, who of which I'm reprising my role as Okura in the newest episode coming tomorrow on YouTube.
That would be October 10th on a Tuesday. Check that out.
Justin is your hype man, yo.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that we did at the beginning of the year is we talked about what is theater to me, and stuff like that. So I want to be more specific in this question instead of just going theater. What makes a good actor?
By far, listening skills. That's what no matter what director I work with, what cast I've worked with, if you can't listen and take feedback and also obtain the skills, then nobody's going to want to work with you if you don't show that you want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Like what he said, to me a good actor is to have the ability to adapt to your skills to on will for any new play, script, movie, whatever acting you're in currently. Because if you can adapt your new skills, your overall character becomes more likable.
Well, for me, to be a good actor is always doing what you're supposed to do and remembering your lines, and remembering your blocking and your stage directions, things like that. Getting along with the cast.
Okay, so that brings up a question of, so are we talking about actors who are talented or actors who are skilled? Their brains go
I feel like it goes hand in hand because just raw talent will only get you so far. Every actor that you see on TV, majority will say, they all have the same basic work ethic if you break it down into building blocks, which goes for any job that you want to do or anything you want to do in life. I break it down to a few different things. One, they listen good. They work well with people, most of them. And then they get established in their field. And then they just have a good work ethic. And they practice for hours because it is a full-time job.
That's what I was gonna say.
As you said, that talent only gets you so far. I agree and also somewhat disagree with that, because as one of the great voice actors once said, James R. Taylor once said that a great thespian can sound dramatic just by using his voice. For example, in the show James R. Taylor Live, he was talking at Disney World, and he discussed that he then proceeded to do his Ian McKellen impression, reading from the phone book, and with some music in the background, it sounded a lot more dramatic than it needed to be.
I feel like to be a good actor, you have skills, but I think it's mostly from the talent. I know you said raw talent can only get you so far, but when you think about it, there are some roles in some situations where people go above and beyond the call of duty for that role. Like, they'll do things that people haven't even heard of to turn themselves into that character and live that character. Like
sending a rat in the box to your cast members.
Yeah, like in the production.
Wait, who did that?
It was it Jared Leto?
Oh yeah, Jared Leto did that.
During the production of one of the Batman movies, Heath Ledger,
Dark Knight. He was in. That was the only Batman movie he was in.
Okay, kept himself up for 2 weeks straight to lose his
3.
mind for
3 weeks.
Okay, 3 weeks straight to lose his mind for the role of the Joker.
Well, I feel like that goes back to work ethic, because he wants to deliver the performance of a lifetime. So he was like, well, here's the work, and here's what I'm going to put into it. I'm going to
put everything
quote
into
unquote.
It.
Well, y'all know that when I'm talking about it, I talk about it as two different beasts, right? I talk about, there are people who are talented actors, like we see them every day, but there are very few people who are skilled and talented actors. Mm-hmm. I think there is a pitfall that you can fall into if you're just talented. A lot of the people, and like we've seen this in other things like sports, where you have the person who is the game day player, but they don't practice well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's somebody who in my perspective, they're relying on their talent as opposed to building on their talent with skills. I've worked with both types of actors. One of my favorite actors that I worked with in college, it took her going into a conservatory setting and doing theater 24/7 to really find that talent. But what she was a very skilled actor. She knew how to use the skills that she was taught in her acting classes and things like that to still portray characters. If you're not willing to go through the process with us, then it upsets the collaboration of people coming together. And if you're only game day, then that you'll lose opportunities.
I said I don't think that an actor doesn't take anything seriously while they want to be the best of the best. They're not showing everyone that could be the best of the best because they're not showing their their motive to actually do it.
What matters is learning and growing on it and hopefully just getting better.
Yeah.
I like to think of that picture that you used to have up there with the iceberg with only the tip that was sticking out, and it would say the show.
Love that meme.
The whole rest of the bottom of the iceberg was a rehearsal, because they go out there and they see what we've used 6 weeks to fine craft and tune. They don't see all the work that we've put into it behind the scenes. They only see the final product.
Yeah.
Nick, in your voice acting, how is now that we've kind of shifted to rehearsal versus the show, how does rehearsal play a role in what you do?
Well, see, in voice acting, it's a lot more different than normal acting, because in voice acting, you simply just have to read off the script and record, and then you send your lines in. It's only on rare occasions where you have to do live recording sessions that you have to memorize. But even then, you don't even have to memorize. You can still just have the script offhand and just talk it to the mic, make it all the more simpler.
But like, I would say, like, wouldn't you just go through multiple takes to find the voice that you wanted.
Yes, you still have to go through multiple takes. There
Yeah.
could be the smallest thing from some background noise you can't get rid of to have to restart. Like with me, whenever I hear some noise in the background that turns on, like my air conditioning when I'm recording, I simply sigh and I just have to restart everything until it shuts off. But as with normal acting, you don't even for voice acting, you could still put the exact same amount of effort and the exact same amount of emotion in your performance as well as you could as normal acting when you rehearse for several weeks.
We've talked about how we recognize a good actor. Actually, I guess we really talked about that from our personal perspective of when I'm trying to be a good actor. How do we recognize a good actor?
So are we talking about, like, we go see a show, like, oh, we go see Hamlet, and we go see...
Like, and you go, that dude playing Hamlet is the best actor on
With
stage.
no background.
How do you recognize that without knowing the person?
Ooh, wow, this is a question.
Yeah.
Someone who you can tell it's their stage when they outperform everyone else. You can tell that they're a great actor.
Yeah.
Well, I break into 3 things: their projection, the way they say things, and their body language.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to see just a stiff actor. You gotta move with your whole body.
Okay, but like, let's go
Sweet.
to a show like, because I feel like we're talking about like high school, but let's go to a show like any Broadway show you go see. Those are all great actors, but how do you, if you had to rank them, besides just body language, because they're all going all out, they all using all they can and making their characters come to actual life, what goes then?
You remember them based on whose performance was more memorable.
Yeah.
Well, you see, the person that stands out, and like when you think about the show and you think about that person, that's how you know it's like one person sticks out to you and is memorable. That's how you separate them from the rest.
This is one of those big questions I ask y'all that it's hard to answer for me personally also.
I think I have a good example on how you can tell a good actor. I'm going to use an example of a movie, for animated movie from Disney. I'm going to use an example of an animated movie from Disney as for to tell like who is a great actor and who shows the better performance. On the example of Sleeping Beauty, the protagonist in that movie is not as impressive as the antagonist, Maleficent. Her performance outshines everyone else's combined because of her charisma, skill, and the way she words her sentences. And that's what makes her the all the better character than the protagonist who we're supposed to like.
Which goes back to the old thing from comic books, because y'all know I relate everything in the world back to comic books, is the hero is only as good as their rogues gallery, their villain. Like, we wouldn't care about Batman if we didn't have Joker.
But
Joker
like,
is not the best.
going back to
He's got...
Maleficent.
No, I'm saying they destroyed Joker in the comics. I'm not talking about the movies.
Well, like, okay, we're gonna go on a tangent real quick. But it's just like, which Joker? Because you know the story.
That's what I'm saying. They've destroyed Joker.
Oh.
So, but like, touching on a great villain, like when Angelina Jolie played Maleficent in the movie Maleficent, I think she did a great job because we always know Maleficent is this evil, wicked creature. That's what I remember her from the fairy tale. But when Angelina Jolie portrayed her, she had like I wouldn't say humane because she's a fairy, but like she had a side that you could connect to. Not even just hearing her story.
That's my notes.
Segues. But not even just having a side that you can connect to, but a side like you can tell that she actually has some feelings, has emotions that they arc, and like they come in and out just like I would. I would just be like, I'll be angry, sad, and a little understanding all at the same time.
That's story structure, I think. But I want to go back to what I was going to say.
Can I take it back to what you said about the comic books?
Wait,
There's so many, you guys
Hold
want
on,
to
hold
take
on,
it back.
hold on. Let me go back to mine before I lose it.
Okay.
Let's go back to before I lose it. So, one of the things I think to find a great actor is you have to see them do multiple roles.
Yeah.
One of my favorite actors is a guy who graduated from Murray State long before I was there, and his name is Earl Brown. One of the things I like about him as an actor is you have seen him in everything that he's been in, but you don't always know it's him.
Right.
Now, I don't know what method he uses. I've met him several times. I've talked to him several times. But I do know that each time I see him, I go, was that Earl? And then I go back and you hit IMDb or whatever and see him there. Like there was this episode of CSI that was just on. And I just happened to look over at the TV. I'm like, I think that's Earl. And so then I get engrossed with the show because I start watching him. And he's a character actor. I'm pretty sure he would classify himself that way. But he's a character actor, and he just melts into those roles. So I think actors like that stand out to me.
Going back to what you said, Justin, about different performances, I'd like to point out that a lot of movies nowadays, especially with horror movies like Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street, the new remakes for those, they all give better backstories for the antagonists. As to opposed with Disney from back then, back in the old days of the 80s, 90s, they gave their protagonists all the time, all the backstory to make them more acceptable into the story. While nowadays, they're doing the surprise pull the rug moment where they have no villain for a while, and then they give you a surprise villain at the end, which is terrible and not creative whatsoever.
I'm just like a wicked person.
You wanted to say something?
You know, I was thinking about what you said about the superhero and the supervillain thing, and how the superhero is only as good as the supervillain. And then I started thinking about the movie Iron Man 2, because honestly, in my opinion, I don't think it's that good of a movie.
Oh, I hated it.
I think Iron Man 2 was bad because of what you said. Like, they had the villain in there, Whiplash, and like, Whiplash to me, he didn't stick out and he didn't do anything that made me remember him. So like, by that,
And they wasted a good actor.
Yeah, he was just a mechanic with a parrot.
he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't. Whiplash didn't like do anything that made you hate him. So it was like there was no like hurrah moment for seeing Tony Stark and Don Cheadle beat him.
They're relying on CGI to tell the story a lot of times.
CGI is everything nowadays.
Here, like Star Wars has all these great actors in it right now, but they bury them under CGI. And so even though they're using, the little points and stuff like that, and seeing Andy Serkis play Gollum and then is really fascinating as somebody who sees and does this stuff and wants to understand. And then but CGI hides a lot of what he's doing, even though they used motion capture.
Can I give another example?
Okay.
Another example from going on the Iron Man 2 thing. Spider-Man 3 ruined a great franchise because in the third movie they just threw all this at you at once, and like none of the characters had a time to like develop a story or give you a reason to care about them. So by the end of the movie, when they were all defeated, you were like, oh, okay, they were just a villain. They were there.
Okay, so I believe everybody here's written at least one play, right? You wrote one your freshman year. You've written two. You've written
I wrote
one.
a movie.
I wrote my freshman year.
And you wrote your freshman year.
Cancer.
Me too.
Okay. By being an actor and looking back on it, because one of the things with our podcast is to get young playwrights to write their plays, because we all have ideas, but actually writing it down is the hard part. Looking at yourselves as an actor, what have you discovered about acting by writing a play?
That it's the easiest thing in the world to memorize a script and become a character. But when I tried to write one myself, I found myself having writer's block, and I couldn't come up with any interesting ideas or anything interesting ideas or anything funny. So like I found myself keep running into walls.
So you were trying to write a comedy and you found you couldn't be funny writing.
Well, I couldn't have any idea. I couldn't come up with any ideas.
Yeah.
Because, I read scripts, I'm like, oh, this looks so easy. And then I try to do it myself, and I'm running face first into a brick wall.
I realized language, like diction and like accents, and just the way you structure your sentences, and like language plays a big part in whatever you do. Because I wrote a play, and I needed something to write about, so I tackled a topic that I knew very well. I tackled segregation and racism, and just took another one. And it wasn't as good as the projects I worked on before, because I would always work on poetry and spoken word. But when I took it to two people, it was an older brother and younger sister. Kevin has said they sound like the same person, and it's just hard to break that up to this person should sound this way, this person should sound that way. when I just listen to myself all the time.
Okay, to you people listening out there, something you have to know. Kayla refuses to talk, but keeps nodding her head at everything the rest of us say. So she is an active participant, but I should have put a bell on her forehead so you would know.
For me,
Shot collar.
I find that when writing a play, it's the difference between writing a play and performing in a play is that performing in a play, you act in the world, while creating a play, you have to create the world, every aspect, the characters, the story, the background, the environments, every little small detail in order for your story to be great.
So I had a conversation this weekend over text with someone who was writing a play, and we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And she kept asking me, well, what do you think about this idea? And she'd give me a plot point. And then I'd say, well, tell me about the character. And then she'd give me another plot point. I'm like, but tell me about the character. I need to know about the characters. And I think what I found hardest in writing is similar to what Justin's talking about, is finding the character that wanted to be written about, then giving them a legitimate voice where they sounded different than the other characters and where their voice, their story needed to be told. And I thought that's hard. And one of the things I really, really like about working on stuff like that is finding the voice, finding the reality in this person. So I always start character out. When you had to start your plays, where did you start from? Kayla, you go first because you haven't talked in a minute and 27 seconds.
I just thought of like movies I watched. I was like, oh, I like that idea, but I didn't steal that idea. I thought about, I like how that story is told. I also like how another movie. I like how the characters are portrayed, and I guess I went off from that. But I put a little twist on my own. So
okay, so you and I actually collaborated on one of our plays. You turned in a partially written play, and we needed a fully written play. So I finished out like 2 pages of it, which was interesting because the play you finally turned in did not end the same way the play that we did on here did.
At all.
So how did you start with that? Like, where did you start your worst nightmare from?
Well, I started from Monsters Incorporated, but also I started from the characters remind me of supernatural characters as well. Sammy is Sam, but it's not actual Sam. I kind of came up with those, and I really thought it was pretty cool to have a little comedy. And
so Justin, you were talking about your play, Where To From Here, about the brother and sister, and and you kind of said you started writing about something that you're familiar with. So what made you turn it into a play?
Well, it actually all started from a joke I heard one time. It was, I guess it was some Disney Channel show, but it was like 3rd grades, they were like 5th grades rough. We're learning such and such a thing, and so I wanted that in one of my plays. So it started from that one line, and it said, 5th grade is rough. We're learning long division. So I was like, well, we can make it a female, and I was like, what is that female gonna do? And I was like, well, she can be a side character. I was like, let's give her an older brother. And I was just stuck on older brother, older sister for the longest. And so then I was like, well, maybe we'll make the brother just go away and try to experience something new, as his sister's also experiencing something new, moving into the 6th grade. They're kind of moving together. And so that's where the play kind of started, and that's how it took off. I just kept adding ideas from one line. Start with one character that I want to see on pages. I want to see them on screen or just come to life, and then I'll build characters around that, then a setting, and then the plot. So I kind of work from just this small seed of, here's this guy or gal just here, but why are they here and where are they at?
The first play ever, and I hardly remember because I had little to no experience. However, the it's not the thing I have written most, and I've been working on for a while now, would be a book I'm writing. While books and plays are different, they're also very similar in the same way. Both have stories, plots, characters that can be voiced. And my book, I based it mostly off watching Lord of the Rings and how they portray their characters. And I based it around the same thing, the same concept of fantasy. Orcs, elves, men, dwarves. And while the concepts are similar, they're different. While in Lord of the Rings, they're separated. They care not for the troubles of each other. My world, they're united, and they are seeking to keep a world of peace, while in Lord of the Rings, the world's not at peace, and it takes them to the very last movie to team up.
Hunter?
Okay, when I went to go write my play, I was thinking, I didn't base it off anything. I wanted to think of something that nobody had ever heard of before, nobody had ever done before. So that's why I settled on the name Dusty Trails Cabbage Farm. And throughout the play, I used characters that I could just think of that like no other play or no other movie would have used before. Like I had a character with one eye in there, and I used like these made up insults I came with, and I found it funny. But looking back at it, I don't like what I did, and I know I could do better. But at the time, I was trying to come up with something completely original, which probably wasn't the best thing for me to do at the time.
Well, we've done the play Remember Grace. Actually, 3/4 of the people sitting at the table were in the play. So Remember Grace started with a teacher walking up to me and saying, there's a grant that I'm trying to apply for about texting and driving, and like how to create a prevention program for it. And then she's like, do you have any ideas? And I was like, sure, there's a play out there for it. And she's like, oh yeah, so I'll write that in the grant. And come to find out, there wasn't. So I sat down and started writing it, and came up with the character of Chloe, and then built from Chloe out. And then after I finished it, I realized this isn't a play about texting and driving at all. And then I realized what I'd written was a play about depression and coping with depression. And so I went back into it. On the successive rewrites, wrote back to that theme and got rid of all the extra.
If you'd like to support In the Wings podcast, please email us at inthewings.pvp@gmail.com. Thank you for your support.